everyone. Menna and I are the co-leads of the Women in Science Working Group, and we are honored to welcome you all to our discussion panel on the positive aspects of the pandemic, seeing the glass as half full. As we all know, the pandemic has been challenging, and it has had a lot of impact on all aspects of our lives, whether it be personal, professional, social, financial, emotional, and even more. But in some ways, I think we've all reached that point where we are somewhat fed up of the pandemic and also of all the negative impacts that it has had on us. And then the reality is that we just cannot control either of these aspects. Therefore, the members of the Women in Science Working Group thought that it would be important to take the time to reflect a little bit on some of the positive aspects that have come out of the pandemic. And so as a team, we decided to put together this discussion panel, and Menna and I are honored to be your hosts and moderators. But before we begin, let us introduce you to our panelists today.
Hello, everyone. So I first introduce Sharon. So Dr. Sharon Ein is an associate professor. She completed her bachelor in biotechnology at University of Kabunksan and at Malaysia with the first class honors. And then she further did her DPhil in medical oncology at the University of Oxford. And then she got trained at Karolinska Institute in Sweden as a postdoctoral fellow. And now she serves as a lecturer at University of Sens in Malaysia. And Sharon has been a member of Global Young Academy since 2020.
Our second panelist is Jonas Radl, who is a sociologist from Berlin and currently an associate professor of sociology at the Department of Social Sciences of the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. He is also the principal investigator of the research project Effort and Social Inequality, funded by a starting grant from the European Research Council, and he leads a research group at the WZB Berlin Social Science Center related to this interdisciplinary project. Jonas has been a member of our Global Young Academy since 2019.
Okay, so I go first with the first question. So tell me, Jonas, how did the pandemic impact your work, family, and the work-life balance?
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation and coordination by our colleagues, Nafissa and Menna. And yeah, so sorry that we had to cut the previous panel short. Just to respond to your question. So yeah, obviously, the impact at first was quite negative. In my work, we had it very severely adverse consequences in the research project, which also includes data gathering with school children. So we had to cancel all the experiments that were already scheduled, things like that. And yeah, really many parts of the whole work plan up in the air, a bit jeopardized. Yeah, then later I think we got back on track and now are hopeful to be, yeah, also with an extension of this of the biggest project that I'm running there to hopefully get most of the work done eventually. And otherwise, yeah, I had in my personal life, I had then also like towards the end of the year, last year actually became a civil servant. So there was a positive, I guess, and pretty good and comforting transition. In the family, the impact was bad at first as well. We had a loss in Spain, many people died. And also in our extended family, we had a loss, yeah, and also kind of in the broader network. So it was pretty severe, making it hard really for everybody. And yeah, then obviously with the confinement, you know, I think things were pretty tough for everybody, especially these first months in the spring, where there was just not much life overall to be lived. And nevertheless, you know, in terms of the balance, I mean, less traveling and less time kind of spent away from the home, and yeah, more options to spend time with the loved ones at home, and joint family lunches, I think, are really great.
Okay, sorry. So Sharon, can you tell us how did the pandemic impact your work, family, and the work-life balance?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be on the panel. The pandemic has actually given me a major mind shift, so much that I'm actually willing to wake up at 12:30 midnight to share my experience. So I have an infant and a toddler. When the pandemic hit, my husband lost his job. He works in Singapore, and he was not able to come back to Malaysia, and neither was he able to fly back to Germany. He's German. Well, with the travel restrictions, we have not seen one another for more than a year now. I suddenly found myself trying very hard to juggle between meeting deadlines and attending online meetings, and then also having two crying kids pulling on to my legs all the time. It really affected me mentally. I have never been more challenged trying to be a good mother while pursuing a career. And I remembered at that time, I constantly blamed myself for not being able to be better, to be a better mom and to be a better career woman. I just constantly felt like I was a failure.
Yes.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, we can totally see the impact that this has had for your family, and the challenge you must have experienced with two young kids by yourself. Definitely not easy to keep up with your career and deadlines. If I can ask then the follow-up question to you, Sharon, when you think of the pandemic personally, what would you say that you have learned from it, whether it's about yourself or about the society? And what do you think are some of the important lessons that the society has learned from the pandemic?
Well, first of all, I think the pandemic has definitely brought out half the feminist in me. I now see mothers in a very different light altogether. I had anxiety attacks, and I also had the opportunity to feel how it was like to be a single mother, trying to make things work when planning ahead just did not work anymore. One thing for sure, I had more time to sit down and process my emotions and started realizing many things. I have previously been so busy chasing after my promotion and building my career. I did not really spend too much time with my family. And now I actually notice that because I'm cooped up at home a lot more, I for once remember my baby's milestones. Also, mental health issues have always been a taboo in Asia. So, judgment and discrimination are often the reasons why many choose to suffer in silence. I was actually very encouraged by others when they share with me their experience. And therefore, I chose to share my experience and feelings in articles as well as is this in this sort of panel discussions. Um, my mental health challenges were short-lived, and I constantly thought about how about those who were not able to get past that negative spiraling thoughts, that harmed them for so long. I've got people close to me who took their own lives, or even students who came to me and shared that they wanted to take their own life. It was very hard for me being a PI, a principal investigator, and a leader at that time to have to think about the experiments that were stalled, and then knowing that your students are going through these negative feelings, and you feel helpless that you cannot help them because you yourself also are going through very similar experience. So I started advocating for kindness in leadership as a result of an inspiration from what I went through. And I believe that kindness is what the society needs now, whether to be kind to one another or to actually be at the receiving end.
Yeah, very good point, Sharon. It's true that often we feel that we want to provide the support to our students, that support that they need for their mental health, but we feel like we don't have the training or the expertise to be able to provide that support. And in some ways, we feel like our hands are a little bit tied. But I wish that that support was there. Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. Jonas, how about you? What are some of the lessons you have learned personally and that you feel that maybe as a society too, we have collectively learned from this pandemic?
Yeah, I think there's quite some apparent lessons. I think for everybody, including myself, no, realizing that maybe some of our previous lifestyle, or of many of us, was maybe unnecessarily anxious, or this jet set, especially traveling a lot for maybe some meetings, that now we realize with the proper culture and technology in place, it's really fairly well substituted with an online meeting. I mean, yeah, there's can discuss what's the percentage, but it is relatively high for, I think, for many instances, and I think so that's an important lesson. I mean, that takes away, right, this time that you're away from home. It takes away from your family. It takes away from certain quality moments that you can have for yourself, for your loved ones, so that you can actually also spend productively on work. So I think oftentimes we haven't really realized that maybe how much unnecessary time goes with these trips. And now that this is not as much expected anymore, I think this is a good lesson. And then obviously for the whole planet, right? I mean, the climate change has been a big topic of debate, and here, I mean, unfortunately, the positive impacts do not seem to be as big, no, as we might have hoped from this kind of year off. And so very far, right, from reaching even the Paris goals of preventing self-destruction. So I think, I mean, hopefully we can really take it to heart. And I think, overall, the fact that some of these freedoms were taken away from us, I mean, I agree with Sharon that it has been very challenging on many levels to many. And maybe I personally have been rather privileged that it didn't come to really a strong hardship. But I think to some extent, the fact that this is taken away from you makes it value you certain things more that we kind of took for granted, right? And so that's, I think there's a truism, right? Like you don't really realize what you have until it's gone. Georg Simmel here at this in the philosophy of money was, I think, the first to write this down systematically. How the human mind works in the terms of how we value things. And I think so now, like the next time we can really be with our loved ones and go out for certain activities, be in groups and just have fun together, I think will be something we will really cherish.
Absolutely. It's true that we used to take a lot of these things for granted before, and now we realize how precious they are, right? And that we don't ever want to take them for granted anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So, continue with more questions.
Okay, so everyone wants to go back to their own normal life and the lifestyle that they were used to. But one thing must have definitely changed that you want to keep after the pandemic and after all the restrictions are gone, hopefully. What is this one thing? We can start with Jonas. Jonas, you're muted.
Thanks. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, I mentioned a bit of it already. So I just to stress maybe again, the boost for digitalization. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this has really broken lots of barriers, and I think has been really helping in innovation on many fronts where before maybe there were inertias that prevented it, right? Like be it for people like us in different kind of cloud working arrangements, so on, but also for kids, for example, right? Digitalization in schools, and this is something that potentially could really engender lots of benefits, including for disadvantaged collectives. And so I think those would be something. And then generally, I mean, home office, remote work, right? More flexibility. I think this is something that is potentially really something that we should try to preserve and resist maybe some of these pressures from employers that are now starting to kind of trying to get everybody back to a 5-day work rhythm, right? So I think that would be important to try to keep some days at home for everybody who can.
Okay, and Sharon, would you like to say like the main things that you really want to keep after restrictions are lifted?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jonas. I mean, work flexibility is something that I value. And I think it's very much dependent on the culture and the employers as well. But where I work, you know, my boss my boss thinks that, you know, by being in an office, it means that you're being productive. And I don't necessarily agree with that. So for me, it is all about being productive, regardless if I sit in the office or not. To be able to enter the office when I need the space and the silence to work, and otherwise work from home when the kids need me, especially when they're sick. I think that is the best sort of empowerment for me. And also, the privilege of attending online meetings as an option now is great, because then I wouldn't fear having to miss out on opportunities.
Absolutely. Yes, very, very good point. And I think that flexibility and this ability to make our own schedule, to be able to maintain this work-life balance, while, as you said so nicely, keep up our productivity, is so important, you know. And it's not because we're not on site that we're not able to do our work. I think we've come to realize that actually a lot of our work can be done very effectively off-site. That was definitely a good lesson from the pandemic. And so, Sharon, if we can continue on this topic, we know that the pandemic has greatly affected the career of scientists, and especially that of women, because we've had to juggle childcare, child education because of school closures, while keeping up with our productivity and this competitive science world we are all in. But are you able to think of maybe one aspect of the pandemic where you think that it has, for you as a woman scientist, affected your career positively?
Oh, definitely. Before the pandemic hit, I remembered, you know, especially as a young early career researcher, you know, to be invited to the conference to give a talk, all these opportunities are actually very precious, and you wouldn't want to turn them down. And when you have very young kids, or even after you've just given birth, you have to decide if you want to travel halfway around the globe to attend these conferences while you're trying to breastfeed your kids, you know, you have to bring your breast pump. And I have friends like bringing the breast pump, and then they express the milk and they send the milk back all the way by FedEx back home. So it's a sort of commitment that young mothers have, you know, while trying to juggle the career. So for me, working from home and still not having to miss out on opportunities to attend conferences, meetings, and still being able to take care of my babies, I think that one is an added advantage. And especially for early career researchers with young family, right? I'm able to join in the meetings, and I also took up new lessons, new courses. I learned German. You know, I have A1 certificate now, so I'm so proud of myself. But the journey was just so tough, trying to study and at the same time, you know, be a career woman and a mom. You
Good
know,
point.
I didn't need to feel guilty. You know, the best part is if my kids pop up on screen, people are able to just accept it as a norm, and I do not feel judged.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, very true. This openness, this willingness to accept that our women scientists are mother too, I think is definitely a big step forward that has come out of this pandemic. Yes, thank you, Sharon. And how about you, Jonas? How would you say that there has maybe been like some positive aspect of this pandemic on our scientists, you know, other than all the negative aspects that we have all experienced?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, Chen already said a lot about the remote works. I don't need to repeat it, fully agree. I think, you know, let's say that the scientist part of the female scientist, I think there is a gain, right? Because the pandemic has really, I think, highlighted the value of science all around the globe in many societies. Like, for instance, here in Spain, where maybe there wasn't as much consideration for science. Now, you know, the newspapers are obviously full every day with all kinds of coverage, and people learn, even like lay people learn lots of stuff about science and how important it is. Obviously, the vaccination being now the big star of the scientific disciplines. The virologists, etc. But I think, you know, even beyond medicine, health sciences, and pharmacology, we can hopefully all benefit a bit from you know, more value being attributed to science as a general valuable endeavor, and where you never really know when you will need some basic research in certain areas, right? That is maybe not fully, you know, right now the current challenge, but maybe it's the challenge of tomorrow. And I think that is that could be potentially important to men and women alike. But yeah, this is obviously not to ignore the big inequalities that exist in science and beyond between genders. And you know, the presence of my Berlin institution, Jutta Eimendinger, she argued at the beginning of the pandemic that this really set us back a whole generation in terms of equality and emancipation of women, right? Because there was this very clear finding from the initial phase with the school closures that all the homeschooling was basically done by women, and the men kind of flew back into, often kind of confined themselves to their remote work roles. And so yeah, not sure how I get the turn to the positive again here, but certainly it's good that we are united in this in this cause, that we have organization like the GYA that tries to push forward towards more progress and justice. Thanks.
Okay, so actually your points were all great, and we would like to sum up like some of the positive things so that we can visualize them better. So Sharon has raised the point where people are more aware of others' need. So you get to put yourself in the shoes of others, of single women, single parents, depressed people because of the pandemic. So it maybe stimulated us to put ourselves in others' shoes more. And also we all got to spend more time with our family and cherish the family and their importance. We save a lot of time that would have been lost in travel. It's not necessarily wasted, because of course face-to-face meetings are still very special, but yeah, we can do a lot more now, and we all accept now that online meetings can be very fruitful. And this especially for single parents, yes, and for also early career researchers, like Sharon said, because I also had the same case where I had a very little kid that I would not have been able to travel or go anywhere, and yet I could still be on track. So that's amazing. And of course, the digitalization, which Jonas mentioned, for school kids, for researchers, that broke many barriers. And the importance of science, of course, and people got to realize how important funding research is, and the home office, and being productive despite the location. So yes, this is yeah, these are the main points, and it was a very great discussion. And we have like 3 minutes or 4 to get a bit more questions. So would someone like to ask a question? Rola, are you? Yeah,
I can start with a question.
Yeah.
And my question is for Jonas. Jonas, often, you know, as women, we feel in science that we cannot share that we're also mothers, you know, that we're having to kind of hide that because we're worried about how we will be perceived. And do you think would you say men have similar experiences as fathers?
I think there is a certain still a certain stigma sometimes with you know, prioritizing childcare over work at given moments, and depending on your audience, I guess. I didn't actually mention this. I should have. Now I feel a bit guilty that among the positive things I didn't mention that we also had a second child just a couple of months ago. So I experienced fatherhood for the second time. Thank you. And actually, nicely in Spain, like in these 8 years since the birth of my first child, they reformed the parental leave policies quite substantively. So instead of 2 weeks, I now have a right to 16 weeks of a leave, and the first 6 were mandatory. And I felt really kind of, first I thought, why do they oblige me to take the first 6? You know, it kind of limits your flexibility also with coordinate with your partner and so on. But in the end, I thought it was really good that I could just say, you know, I have my 6 weeks now, and you know, to everybody, you know, that's just what it is now. I think this is really important that for, you know, the policies really, because everybody can try to be brave and kind of be a trailblazer, but you know, the law of big numbers, yeah, it tells us that the incentives and the rules really are very relevant here. So I think this is important that we push for progressive policy change.
Yes, very nice point, Jonas. It's true. When we think of empowering women, we think of maternity leaves. But if we want to empower women, it's not just maternity leaves that we need, but also paternity leaves, you know, so parental leave, so that both can be there to take care of and then also continue to progress in their careers. Yeah. Thank you, Jonas. Menna, do we have questions?
Yeah, I'm very sorry that I got confused. We still have 15 minutes. I'm very
Yes.
sorry. Yes. So Rola had the question. Actually, you would like to ask it, Rola?
Yes. Sorry, I don't have my camera on, but my husband is doing homework with my kids exactly next to me. So just in place for the discussion we're having just now. So my question comes a little bit more from a societal point of view and not so much about policy that you just discussed. There are differences between countries on what is expected from a man and what is expected from a woman when it comes to household. What is expected from a father and what is expected from a mother, and there's nothing wrong or right in that, but there's certain norms, there's certain cultures that have we grew up with that. And my question is more going forward, how might we as a next generation of scientists, of academics, of people, of parents, how can we help into making the society be more open about these things? Because we saw now, obviously during COVID, that the whole idea that the husband, whether in academia or not, works, and the wife, whether in academia or not, stays, or in science in general, stays at home, doesn't work. It doesn't work. We were both at home. So we had to find a new norm for us. But society doesn't always accept that. When I used to travel, the first reaction people would have is, where are the kids? Who is staying with the kids? Your husband is a hero. He stays with the kids. But when my husband travels, nobody asks him where's the kids, because it's the culture that so the question, very long question, but the question is, how can we help change that culture? And I'm asking both our speakers, but Sharon can answer first if she wants, because I want to hear it from both a male and a female on how do we change this culture. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. It's actually very timely. In fact, I was just discussing this with my German husband, because I go through this exactly. I don't know how we can change, because I often have these sort of discussions with my colleagues, and they are scientists, you see. And you know, I do share with them the struggles that I go through, but sometimes I get replies like, "Oh, just relax." You know, I was like, "But you are a father. How can you tell me that? You should understand you have a young kid." And on the other hand, I do have like female colleagues who share with me the meltdown, you know, that they cannot handle it, and they have arguments at home or domestic abuse because, you know, of a certain expectations. I even have this kind of casual conversations when I go to the clinic and see the female doctor, and she would tell me that You know, it's not possible for her to like stay at home and take care of the kids because the parents-in-law would expect her to do that and she doesn't want to do that. It's very much cultural and expectations. So I don't really know how to change it because I would like to think that these people that we're talking about, they're educated. So I don't really know how to go about it because sometimes I'm quite upset, that, these sort of expectations are being thrown at women and guys just say, oh, I'm happy to be in the office today. At least I don't have to be at home, changing nappy. How would you actually feel, when you hear these sort of things and you know that you have to do that as a woman? And ideally you want the husband to be able to play an equal role, right? Because I think in a European country it's almost quite equal, but it's just that maybe in an Asian country it's just a bit lopsided. To be honest, I don't really know how to answer that question because I have been thinking a lot and wondering as well.
Okay. Jonas, would you like to? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so don't have the real a good answer, I think, for the ruler. I mean, these are deeply ingrained norms and values over generations. It's very hard to change overnight. As I mentioned before, I think policies around parental leave are really key. Then obviously preschool, early childcare arrangements in state paid by the state and that are liberating the women. But then what goes on inside the household, I think many people, including many of us, would not be comfortable with policies trying to govern who does the dishes, right? I think that there needs to be a certain organic process, right? So I'm afraid we need to hope that change still occurs. And just to answer to Chern, I mean, maybe it's relatively more equal in Europe, that the division of labor across, comparing the sexes, but it's far from equal as well. So there's very few countries where we're close to parity, and in most it's really pretty stark still. And also the type of domestic work you would then expect to be doing. So
I actually can add something to this because usually people who have like really hardworking moms or children, they are expected to be hungry, not tidy, not having proper, I don't know, education, or not being taken care of. So when this image changes, then everything will change. So I think it's by role models. So the hardworking woman, her kids, if they look I don't know, representative, they are well educated, they get good scores, they look tidy, they have like they're psychologically stable, then the image will change eventually. So I believe like role models, we need just many role models, and then things will change hopefully. Yeah, Shalini had a question also. Shalini, are you here?
Yes, Menna, thank you so much. Such a wonderful discussion going on. But at the same time, it is a very hard reality or truth. And I wanted to, ask, especially to the speakers or anyone else also, because the situation is it really specific to developing and developed country? I do not know about developed country, but about developing country, we had that example shared by Chen, and I also recently Indian National Young Academy, we did a survey, and when we had different questions, and there was one question like break in the career. So male, female both participated in the survey because it was a general survey, but we took out some specific question which were addressing to women in science, and there we could find that men straight away wrote that we never took, hardly less than 1% male reported that they had, and most of the time women had break in their career because of the marriage, kids. And then there was one more question where when we asked like this break was because of what? Kids, okay, and then paternity leave or maternity leave. So there were answers wherein male reported that we do not know how to take care of children, and therefore we, in spite, despite our institute allowed, we did not take the paternity leave. So these answers were like so like very discouraging. So I wanted to ask whether this situation in developing country or in the developed world, the situation is different. It is more advanced. Wherein, and when I talk to my friends in Global Young Academy who are coming from developed world, wherein they share that they have equal responsibility of taking care of children, the situation or the picture is totally opposite in developing countries. So it's really sad. Maybe we will take a lot of time to progress and improve, and but it is a challenge, and we have to accept that reality. In this world of mine, it is considered that when there is a problem, it's a women's problem. She has to manage, and nobody can help, and then she will manage. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. This is a very, very good question. And I think Jonas has a comment with regards to that. So I will let Jonas speak.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, I wanted to pick up the theme of the survey to say that we are still in the field work of our own Global Young Academy survey of workplace challenges, also tapping into some of these issues of work-family balance, but also issues more of conflict, authority, harassment. And we really need to learn about the experience of everybody. So I would please encourage everyone to who hasn't done so yet, to please take the survey. We want to at least paint a picture that's representative of our very select and fine group of young emergent scientists, both women, men, and other genders. Please, maybe I will share the link. But yeah, sorry, this is all I wanted to say. Maybe Sharon has something more directly to add to Shalini's point.
Well, I definitely see the trend, and that was actually the point of discussion with my husband, because he's working in Singapore, he's German, so he definitely sees from both points of the world. So he's able to tell me, and immediately he said that he thinks that in this part of the world, is the more the responsibilities would fall on the women, and it's kind of expected. But he told me that in Germany, although we say that they are a developed country, but he said that there is still some things that need to be improved. So things like that he would share with me, and I would be thinking, we do have a lot of people that have been sent abroad to study and come back to Malaysia, but the kind of comments that I hear and the kind of expectations, kind of like, I just don't think they match, because they have been educated overseas and they come back to think that it is okay to be like that. So part of me really felt that it's very much a cultural thing. I don't know if this can be educated.
Yeah, no, good point, Sharon. I agree. I mean, being here in Canada, I wouldn't say that this problem is non-existent, I mean, it still primarily falls on women and the mother, so how we can change it, or I mean, what we can do about it, it's definitely a loaded question that is difficult to respond. Yeah. So we have one question from NCA. NCA, would you like to ask your question?
No, thank you. Actually, I don't want to ask question. I just wanted to give a suggestion regarding the question of the rule out, because as I understood is that the main problem of the scientists, women scientists as an early carrier, especially as an early carrier one, is that they don't have chance to travel to present their work and these stuff. And the pandemic time is really good and positive things for them. Maybe as a GYA members, we can establish something that for at least for the AGM meetings, in the future AGM meetings, we can support the child care for the women that they have small kids, and then we start from our group. So maybe the other organizations also, they can say that, okay, if there are mothers that they really wants to participate in any scientific or any other activities, there is a child care for them, or even foundations for support their travel expenses and these things. That would be really helpful. So then that says that, okay, we find a solution for a problem. So then, of course, there are many solutions, problems, especially the cultural ones. Doesn't matter that you are married or unmarried. Of course, the women have many problems in the societies. and also too much responsibility when they become mother. But apart from all these problems, maybe we can find a solution for at least in GYA for the AGM meeting. So if we can initiate it right now, at least we can say that we made a positive step in this case.
Okay, that's a very good idea on CA. And actually, this was raised also during the SLP last year when we joined, Nafissa and I. So one of the suggestions was to actually have like a place to have the kids of the GYA members so that they can freely attend and they get the chance to have like, or being taken care of, and also we can enjoy the meeting. So hopefully when things go back to normal, we can consider something like that. So I would like to thank you so much, Sharon and Jonas, for your very interesting points and the nice discussion. And thank you, Nafissa, also for being there. And
thank you, Menna. Thank you to our speaker.
Yeah. Thanks to the audience and the people who asked very interesting questions.
Great session. Thank you very much.